I never truly imagined my life would take such a path. Here I am, a woman around 45, finding herself utterly alone within the beautiful walls of my house, shrouded by an intense feeling of being unseen. My spouse was constantly away, his business engagements stretched from mere days into long weeks. When he did return, his demeanor felt more like a stiff formality than the comforting embrace of a loved one's homecoming. Our conversations rarely delved deeper than superficial pleasantries. It had been many years since we last shared anything resembling genuine closeness. I put on a brave face, prepared his favorite dishes, kept the home immaculate, and exchanged cheerful greetings with the people next door. Yet deep inside, I felt myself slowly disappearing. In the gentle warmth of early spring, my husband announced he was leaving again, this time for almost 4 weeks. I simply nodded, feigning understanding as I always did. I offered no protest. I didn't make a sound. I had convinced myself I'd grown accustomed to this pattern, or at the very least, I believed I had. Barely a week following his departure, my stepson, Liam, arrived home from university for his eagerly awaited spring holiday. At 22, he was a tall young man, exuding a natural politeness, and had always kept a respectful space between us ever since his early teenage years. Having raised him, our bond had always been one of quiet, formal affection. Now, however, he was an adult, and I noticed a distinct alteration in the way his eyes met mine. At first, there was nothing overtly improper, yet it was different from before. I registered that his look lingered just a fraction longer than it usually would. His compliments, which once felt like casual remarks, now seemed to carry an undertone of personal connection. "You look lovely this morning," he mentioned one day as I was in the kitchen, his voice filled with an unexpected warmth. I tried to laugh it off, but my heart gave an unbidden flutter. Our time spent in each other's company began to grow, mostly through unplanned moments. He would offer to help with the shopping bags, suggest we cook supper together, or keep me company while I watched late evening programs. I made an effort to disregard the intensifying undercurrent between us, yet I wasn't entirely unaware. Each instance his hand accidentally brushed against mine. Each time he lingered a moment too close, I felt it profoundly. As one particular day was ending, we found ourselves on the veranda, watching the sky blaze with the magnificent colors of the sunset. He voiced his appreciation for how I managed to keep the family connected, acknowledging the resilience I demonstrated for his father. Words failed me. It had been an eternity since I'd heard such kind words. There was a quality in his voice, gentle yet deeply earnest, that managed to penetrate the emotional fortress I had painstakingly built around my heart. I looked at him then, and I saw more than just my stepson. I saw a man who truly acknowledged my presence. That evening, sleep was elusive. I found myself replaying our exchanges over and over. The way he looked at me stayed with me, and I felt stuck, trying to persuade myself it was all perfectly innocent. Yet, beneath the surface, I was keenly aware of the self-deception. I understood that this burgeoning feeling was far more than simple loneliness. I had crossed an emotional threshold that I could no longer pretend wasn't there. Upon seeing him again the next morning, the sight of his smile stirred a disquiet within me. I realized I was craving that attention, that potent sensation of being desired, even if the source was entirely inappropriate. For the first time in what felt like ages, I felt truly conscious, yet a persistent fear lingered. I hadn't acted on anything, but the knowledge that I was teetering on the edge of a significant moment loomed large. If something didn't intervene soon, I feared I might be unable to steer clear of the approaching emotional storm. It all came to a head on a Thursday night. The silence in the house was profound, and the air itself seemed heavier than usual. Just as I had finished my solitary supper, the rain began to fall in sheets, and with it, the power abruptly failed. In the absence of electric lights, free from everyday distractions, and with only the dancing glow of a few candles providing a soft warmth, the atmosphere in the house transformed. Liam entered the lounge, carefully holding 2 goblets of red wine. He presented one to me with a tender smile, as if he intuitively sensed my need. After a brief hesitation, I accepted the glass. We remained in quiet companionship, the only sound the gentle rhythm of the rain against the window panes. The wine worked to lower my carefully constructed defenses. Our conversation meandered through past memories, weaving through a tapestry of shared emotions. He spoke of his recent feelings of being somewhat unmoored, expressing his gratitude for the solace of home and the sense of security he found in my company. The sincerity of his words enveloped me like a comforting embrace. Then, he made a comment that left me completely motionless. "I don't believe you fully realize just how extraordinary you are, do you?" I stared at him, utterly bewildered, yet he held my gaze without flinching. "You deserve to be with someone who truly appreciates your essence," he continued, "someone who ignites the life within you." My heart began to race with an alarming intensity. I felt a strong urge to dismiss his words, to tell him this was not right. Yet I held back. I allowed his sentiment to seep into my thoughts. I found myself yearning for affection, craving validation, and in that charged moment, the identity of the person offering it ceased to matter. I confessed to him that there were times I felt as though I were becoming invisible within these very walls, as if no one genuinely noticed my existence anymore. He reached out his hand towards mine, cradling it softly, and I found I had no desire to pull away. It felt utterly natural, as if we had arrived at this juncture not by conscious choice, but drawn by an irresistible force of destiny. His touch was delicate. It held no aggression. It was tender and deeply sincere. After such a long time, I finally felt perceived. His gaze was more than mere observation. It lingered on me with an intensity that hinted at unspoken depths, filling the void that my husband had long since allowed to form. He drew nearer. I knew I should have put a stop to it. I did not. Our lips met, a gentle and unhurried connection. The kiss conveyed volumes, expressing emotions that words could never adequately capture. It was not chaotic or rushed. It was profound, brimming with the feelings we had both suppressed for so long. As it ended, we remained in the quiet, each of us intensely aware that we had crossed a significant line, one from which there could be no return. I rose from my chair, announced I was retiring for the evening, and departed, leaving him in the silence. Yet sleep evaded me. My heart pounded with a fierce rhythm, my thoughts a turbulent dance. I was acutely conscious of the profound wrongness that now lay between us. It was more than just a kiss. It was an act of betrayal, not only of my husband, but of everything I believed I stood for. And yet, a small part of my being remained untouched by regret, a part that felt stirred, recognized, and caressed in a way I had long forgotten was possible. Words were insufficient, and I had no wish to find them, yet I knew with certainty that everything had irrevocably shifted. A transformation had occurred within me, something I could never revert. The following morning, I made a point to avoid his gaze. I moved about the kitchen as though everything were perfectly normal, yet an undeniable shift permeated the air. Liam entered the room with an air of nonchalance, yet I could detect a change in his demeanor. He seemed calm, self-assured, as if a boundary had indeed been crossed, and he harbored no regrets. He offered to help with the breakfast preparations. I merely inclined my head, my eyes fixed on something else. The unspoken tension that hung between us was palpable, a force too strong to be ignored. We chose to remain silent about the kiss. Neither of us mentioned it, yet it lingered in the atmosphere, a secret too potent to overlook. I repeatedly tried to reassure myself that it was merely a fleeting moment, a fragile misstep in judgment. Yet, as his hand brushed against mine once more, I remained still. As he leaned in close behind me to retrieve a serving dish, an involuntary shiver coursed through my body. Within me, shame and a thrilling excitement clashed like thunderous waves. Later that day, I noticed him observing me, not in a casual way, but with a deliberate, focused attention, His eyes scrutinized me, examining my face, my movements, every small detail, as if each held some profound significance. It had been years since I had experienced such a captivating focus, neither from my husband nor from anyone else. This was a mistake. I was aware of that truth, yet I found myself unable to resist the allure of wanting more of that attention. Liam found himself dedicating more hours to the comforts of home rather than seeking the company of his friends. He manufactured reasons to linger close, inviting me to watch movies in the evenings, accompanying me on errands, and suggesting leisurely walks. Our dialogues grew more profound. He inquired about my younger years, my unfulfilled aspirations, and the sacrifices I had made over time. I came to understand the alarming extent to which I had concealed my true self for the sake of a marriage that offered me so little in return. I made an effort to establish boundaries. I expressed to him that this situation could not persist, that it was perilous and irresponsible. He absorbed my words, acknowledged them with a nod, and even offered an apology. Yet in the very next moment, he would find me in solitude and, with a hushed voice, confess that I occupied his thoughts incessantly. He insisted that I was worthy of so much more than being effectively abandoned by a man who remained oblivious to my quiet sorrows. As I drifted into sleep each night, his words would pierce through the fabric of my being, seeming to mend the frayed edges of my soul. One evening, he gently caressed my cheek and whispered, "You need not continue this charade. It is permissible to embrace your emotions once more." I chose not to respond. I found it unnecessary. The glance I cast his way conveyed everything. The boundary of emotion had been irrevocably breached. The events that unfolded were entirely unanticipated, yet perhaps in retrospect, they were bound to happen. I found myself a stranger in my own reflection, a woman caught in the throes of guilt and longing, balancing loyalty with an insatiable yearning to be truly desired. I reassured myself that I remained in command, that I could halt this before it spiraled completely out of control. Yet, the reality was that I had already succumbed, and still I was haunted by the potential repercussions, not merely of being discovered, but of the inevitable moment when he would depart again, when his university break would conclude, and I would find myself solitary in this house once more. Would he carry this version of me in his memory as he left, or would I find myself shattered anew? This situation, born from an irreversible error, marked the approaching conclusion of Liam's holiday, and the burden of our actions started to weigh more heavily on us both. In his periods of quiet, it was evident. His gaze spoke volumes, yet his words remained largely unspoken. The weight of our shared silence now seemed to deepen, pressing down upon us with an unspoken intensity. Feeling a palpable sense of guilt, he began to pack his belongings. The intimacy of our recent moments seemed to slip away with each shirt I helped him fold. I sensed fragments of my delicate, constructed world crumbling. We had indeed crossed a profound line, but what lay ahead for us? We never discussed it. He made no promises, and I refrained from inquiring. I sought no illusions. I had existed for far too long, cocooned in a deceptive sense of safety, alongside a husband who scarcely acknowledged my presence. Yet this was unlike anything else. It was unrefined, fervent, and deeply misguided, yet undeniably authentic. And now, it had to come to a close. On the eve of his departure, he approached me, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes for the first time since this all began. He made no move to grasp my hand. He gazed at me as if words were on the tip of his tongue, yet remained unspoken. "I harbor no regrets whatsoever," he spoke softly, "yet I have no desire to disrupt your life either." I nodded, rendered speechless, my throat constricted. Uncertainty enveloped me, caught between the sharp pangs of impending heartbreak and the faint, sweet whisper of relief. As he departed the following morning, I lingered at the door, feeling like a stranger observing someone significant exit her life, without so much as a proper farewell. No farewells, no commitments, merely a fleeting instant, abruptly truncated. The house settled back into its familiar silence, yet an unmistakable chill lingered in the air. As the day slipped by, my husband reappeared, seemingly untouched by the passage of time or his absence. He returned with trinkets, tales from conferences, and recounted details of business negotiations during our dinner conversations. He remained oblivious to my deliberate evasion of his gaze. He remained oblivious to the profound emptiness that had taken root deep within me. I had surrendered myself to another, body and soul, and yet the truth of it was visible only to me. Initially, I believed guilt would engulf me, yet what washed over me instead was a profound sorrow, not solely for my actions, but for the countless years I had spent in the shadows, feeling utterly unseen. The treachery extended beyond the mere kiss or the fleeting touch. It was crystallized in the moment of understanding that an individual who was never meant to hold such significance had perceived me with greater clarity in just 1 week than my own husband had in all those preceding years. Liam sent a brief text message, "Look after yourself." For hours, I found myself transfixed by those 3 words, contemplating every possible nuance before finally mustering the resolve to erase it. I understood that we could not persist on this path, and I was equally aware that returning to the way things were before was not an option. I had transformed, and that transformation was irrevocable. Ultimately, I found myself trapped in a marriage that appeared whole and stable on the outside, yet was utterly vacant within. I spent my days alongside a man who genuinely believed all was well, while I bore the silent burden of decisions that were irrevocable. I found myself unable to reclaim what had been lost. Perhaps the true punishment lies not in the act of being discovered, but in enduring the crushing weight of the silence that inevitably follows. I discovered that love devoid of genuine attention becomes mere habit, while attention lacking unwavering commitment transforms into mere temptation. And in the midst of it all, I misplaced a fragment of my being that is now, and forever will be, beyond my reach.